move from round 2 to 3 of the 2015 FF1M Championship, and we go from Mexico to Brazil, and the Autodromo José Carlos Pache circuit in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'm being joined by Joe Willows this time. How are you doing, Joe?
Very well indeed, and you guys have no idea how many times we tried to set this up.
Yeah, we're having a few technical issues.
Yeah, we were supposed to record this on a Tuesday, but it ended up turning out to be a Friday. So many internet issues, but eventually we found a solution.
Yep, a bit of a long-winded one, but it's a solution nonetheless. So we'll do a quick recap of the Mexican Grand Prix, which saw Fernando Alonso take his first victory since at some point last season. It was Singapore last season when he drove for yourself at Singapore.
Yeah, indeed. Well, it's not going well for my team so far this season, it must be said. It seems that whenever we lose Fernando Alonso, we seem to have a dip.
Yeah, it's not been the best start for yourself, but then again, Hulkenberg and Mitchell haven't had the best starts either, as those two have yet to score points as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, for me, of course, obviously we've kept Nico for another season, and of course we have our rookie Stoffel Vandoorne, who I think I even admit to myself I was taking a bit of a gamble of to have at the team. And well, although he's had a bit of a shaky start, I hope that as the season goes on, he can, build on his speed, I guess.
Yep, and I could say the same for myself with Charles Pic at the wheel.
Indeed. Well.
So we have the starting grid. We got Fernando Alonso on pole position off the back of his Mexican Grand Prix win with Cooper Lee alongside him, so that's another strong qualifying performance for himself. Gonzalez third with Sebastian Vettel in fourth position. Then it's an all-Meister row 3 with Felipe Massa and Kimi Raikkonen fifth and sixth. Had a good start to the season of Meister, and it's good to see. Nico Hulkenberg will start 7th, and Lewis Hamilton will be alongside him 8th on the grid. And row 5 will see the Australian Grand Prix winner Daniel Ricciardo alongside Kevin Magnussen. That's a better qualifying performance from FJR. Row 6, it's an all Gajera row 6, which is certainly a lot better than an all back row Gajera from the first race. Robert Quebitzer ahead of Jean-Eric Vergne. Then it's Sergio Perez and Roman Grosjean, and all Pedersen row 7 on the customer Ilmor engines. Then we've got the first of the Willows with Nico Rosberg ahead of Valtteri Bottas in 16th position for GRM.
Not the best qualifying for my lads.
Next up is Jenson Button for Excellite, Charles Pic alongside him. In 18th position, again a better performance from him in qualifying. Not so for Isuki Yoshida down in 19th position alongside Carlos Sainz in 20th. And then on the back row we have got Stoffel Vandoorne and Antonio Felix da Costa.
Oh my, what happened to Vandoorne in that qualifying session to be on the back row?
And he was fastest in first practice as well, was Vandoorne, so some pace has disappeared somewhere.
Hopefully we'll be able to retrieve it in these next batch of rounds, but here we go with the race.
And the 5 lights are on, and in a moment the 5 lights go out, and it's a good start from Fernando Alonso. Cooper Lee's had a good start, but it's Thomas Gonzalez on the move. He's trying to sandwich Alonso and Lee. Lee alongside in the first corner, but Alonso hanging on round the outside. And it's going to be a Tornado 1-3 for the moment, and Sebastian Vettel has had a good exit out of the Senna S through the Curva de Sol on board with Cooper Lee. Now he's in the slipstream of Fernando Alonso, is choosing the middle line for some reason, so he doesn't feel safe, and Gonzalez definitely not safe as Sebastian Vettel moves up into 3rd position, and the 2 Meisters go into combat, and that's cost Kimi Raikkonen. He's lost a position to Nico Hulkenberg.
Clearly a lack of communication between the Meisters there for that to happen. I bet there'll be some strong words over the team radio with that one.
But they have had a good start to the season. They currently sit 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, so it's a good start for Laura Chung.
I would say it's surprising, but given I had a very strong first season in FF1M, it's not really too much of a surprise, to be honest.
And as we round the Junsao corner, there's Fernando Alonso in the lead of the race. I wonder how much Tornado have turned their engine up for this one. They have access to it. Mitchell do not. Hulkenberg do have access. Look at Sebastian Vettel, he's pretty quick. He has been quick in the first 2 races, but the car hasn't been reliable.
kind of been the story of shake and bake really for quite a few seasons, isn't it? Despite the fact that they won the championship last season, it seems like they've got some of their old tropes back.
And he's making a move on Cooper Lee, going down the Retta Oposta. That's back straight into Desquida de Largo. That's second position for Sebastian Vettel. Now, is he going to chase after Fernando Alonso? Meanwhile, Hulkenberg was pretty close to Felipe Massa as Lewis Hamilton takes a position off of Kimi Raikkonen. So that's 7th for Lewis, former champion. Last won it in 2012.
Bit surprising that Kimi's dropping back quite early on, given that he's not really on a heavy fuel load, so clearly must be struggling early on at this stage.
I must admit I didn't check the strategies for this one, but it could be a mix of 2 and 3 stops. We'll have to see how that pans out once they make the first stops in around lap 15, probably lap 17.
We will see, of course, but it seems that Alonso's still at the moment stretching the gap despite Vettel overtaking Lee a little bit earlier on, so Alonso clearly feeling that Vettel could be a danger if he's not careful.
As Vettel sets the fastest lap of the race, Alonso was a 10th quicker in the middle sector, but Vettel a quarter of a second up in the final sector. So early indications, shake and bake are running higher engine modes for this race.
Meanwhile, bad news for my team is that Van Dorn's at the back at the moment.
He lost a position. Oh, that's what happened to Kimi Raikkonen. I think he was defending his position from Lewis Hamilton, but overcooked the corner a little bit, and that allowed the Axelite to overtake the Meister. And Raikkonen off again. That's the exit of Ferradura. Slide like a rally driver.
Bit of an amateur mistake there from Kimi Raikkonen. You don't expect that from an experienced driver.
No, that's an unusual one. Is Robert Quebitzer. Let's see if anything happens to him. Not really. And oh yes, something did happen to him. He rammed up the back of Valtteri Bottas, I think that was, and he's had a bit of a spin at Laranja.
Bit clumsy there from Robert Kubica. I don't know what he was thinking there.
Yeah, brake way too late. And here is Sebastian Vettel. Look at the straight line speed in that shake and bake. That's a contender for the race win if the car holds up.
Bit similar to how Hamilton got very close to the back of Verstappen in real life with the engine.
Yeah, and he's already making a move on Fernando Alonso down the back straight. Has he got enough brakes to take the lead of the race? Indeed he does. And I think Gonzalez was having a look at Cooper Lee in the background. There it is. So, while one tornado's going backwards, the other one is on the move.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. Although it's safe to say, though, Thomas Gonzalez, you'd have to say, he hasn't really caught on as impressively as I would have thought he would have done, given the performance he showed last year in FF1M. But it seems like he seems to have got his act together so far in Brazil.
Yeah, his performance in the first two races was quite steady. It was 2 6th places in Australia and Mexico. Meanwhile, we had Jean-Eric Verne, who's made his way up the order from very well. He has started 12th on the grid. He's now up to 6th, so he's had a good race so far.
I must say, I do like that. Is it Pedersen, isn't it, that he's driving for, isn't it? It's Pedersen livery, if I'm not mistaken.
He's driving for Gajera.
Gajera. Why am I getting those two mixed up? It was a nice livery. He's going for 5th place now.
5th position for Jean-Eric Verne. And the Gajera's on the move. That's quite a turnaround after their back row start in Melbourne. And
it seems like the charge ain't going to be over just yet, because it seems like he's probably got the pace to maybe even get a podium in this race if he's lucky.
And his next target is Cooper Lee, at the moment 1.5 seconds ahead. Bit of a rocky start for Mitchell. They've shown that they've got a very, very quick car at the start of the season, but a bit of a shambles in Melbourne and the same again in Mexico. Here's Carlos Sainz making a move on one of the Pedersens. That's the position gain for Sainz, and who we're looking at here, that's one of the Gajeras. That's Verne already on the back of Lee.
I believe it is, yeah, it is. It does look like a similar helmet, so I do believe it is Verne. It has number 25 on it, so yeah, this is the battle for 4th we're looking at.
And it's worth mentioning, Quebitzer's recovered up to 17th after his little incident, so he's already got past Van Dorn, Da Costa, Button and Pick. Now is Verne going to do something about Cooper Lee? Let's have a look at the straight line speed of the Gajera compared to the custom-engined Climax in the back of the Mitchell.
He didn't really gain much on that straight, did he? It seems like only in the braking zones he's able to get him.
And it seems in the corners as well, the Gajera's much quicker at this stage. And now he's firmly in the slipstream. Is this going to be 4th position for Verne? Lee's defending aggressively.
Well, and Verne ain't able to get by. And look at this lot.
This is Hulkenberg versus Hamilton for 7th position.
Yep, indeed, and now Hulkenberg is just holding off the final points place from obviously Bottas at the moment. Obviously Sainz is outside the points at the moment, as we can see on the timing tower on the left.
Yeah, we've got the timing tower working for this race. We tried to use it in Mexico, but the graphics weren't having it, but it looks to be working so far, so that'll make tracking the race a little bit easier for us.
It should indeed. I think we actually trialled it a little bit in FF1M Asia, if I'm not mistaken, as well, and it seemed to work out pretty well, so it's nice to see that FF1M's got it here.
Just on the FF2M Asia Championship, that's now finished. We had Cristobal Alvarez win for STV Racing, so that's made me happy.
Indeed. I think he's probably one to look out for in the main FF2M series, if I'm being totally honest with you.
Yeah, it could be a contender. I think Spaniel will be contenders as well. They've got Kimmonen, who's been very quick in practice and testing, and Genjo Chi as well. So that's a strong team. Here's Valtteri Bottas on Nico Hulkenberg.
I think earlier on we just saw Verne overtake Lee as well whilst we were having our little conversation there, but while that was happening, as you just said there, Bottas had just overtaken Lee's teammate, ironically.
Yep. So both Mitchells dropping back a bit. That was Sainz getting ahead of Magnussen. Magnussen not quick in this race, despite qualifying 10th. I can't remember what engine modes I'm running for this. Maybe... I don't think I'm running higher engine modes for this. I'm looking for reliability.
I'm in the same boat as you, James Briggles, to be honest. I can't remember which ones I'm running, to be honest, but there we are.
And we're just seeing a Pedersen overtake and Andrew Racing. That's Grosjean versus Ricciardo. So Grosjean on the move. That's nearly in the pit lane for Valtteri Bottas. He's against Lewis Hamilton now.
I've realised that we're using an up-to-date version of Brazil because that's the new pit lane entrance.
Sorry, that's Sainz and Ricciardo. That's not Hamilton and Bottas. But yes, this was we used this Interlagos for the previous season in FF1M. I think it's a 2019 model.
Yeah, because of course I wouldn't expect a 2021 model to be out straight away. Let's be honest.
Well, if we look at the pit stops when they happen, you can see some names, and this is Bottas versus Hamilton this time, and soon to be former teammates in real F1.
Soon to be former teammates, yeah, and it seems on this occasion Bottas is quicker than Hamilton.
7th position for the GRM driver, and yeah, there's driver names on the pit lane.
He's locked up a bit though, Bottas has.
But he holds on to 7th position. Now, this is Fernando Alonso, or is this Thomas Gonzalez?
No, it's Gonzalez.
Oh, big slide for Gonzalez. Big slide. And lucky not to lose a wheel.
Oh, yeah, indeed. As I was singing his praises earlier on, he's now gone and chucked that one down the toilet, it must be said. But Vettel, meanwhile, is coming into the pits.
On lap 20, so is this a 2 or a 3 stop? We'll find out how much fuel he puts in, and Gonzalez dropped way down the order, down to 18th position, so that's a very costly mistake for the Tornado driver.
Behind even behind the guy that I think actually finished runner-up to him in FF1, if I'm not mistaken, or finished third to him in FF2M, I should say, Stoffel Vandoorne.
Strong contender in FF2M was Vandoorne.
Yeah, Vandoorne had a pretty strong season in FF2M, it must be said, which is why I promoted him up to FF1M when I lost Alonso.
And have Esteban Ocon performing quite well for you, especially in the first half of the FF2M Asia series, was a strong contender for the championship.
Yeah, and I hope that he can do well in the main FF2M series, as Vettel, meanwhile, has just finished his pit stop.
Looks like a 2-stop strategy. He's taken on a lot of fuel, has Vettel. 34 laps, so that should take him to around lap 54, I think.
Well, in theory it should, but you never know with GP4. They usually like to pit a little bit earlier than the amount of laps they have on their wagon, but we will see.
Vettel getting his nose chopped off by the Pedersen. Now he does the dummy up the inside, but not alongside far enough. Who's he against? That's Perez in 4th position.
And this is not going to help Vettel's cause any good at all, because it might help Alonso, given that at the moment he's still yet to make a pit stop. So the more that Vettel gets held up here, the more that it could bring Alonso back into play. Yes,
this is helping Alonso a lot. Vettel did have quite a fairly healthy lead over Alonso. It was about 6 seconds, as Alonso is due into the pits this lap, about 4 laps later than Vettel. So slightly more conventional 2-stop strategy for Alonso. Now, is Hulkenberg going to briefly lead, or is Hulkenberg going to follow into the pits?
We will see, of course. Meanwhile, unseen by the cameras, Vettel has finally been able to get past Perez, so he's now up into, well, provisionally 3rd, but it should be the lead when Alonso and Hulkenberg pit.
We'll see when Fernando exits the pit lane. It's a long pit lane, this one. You lose about 25 or so seconds, so pitting less often is probably the preferred strategy.
There's a lot of people actually pitting this lap. I think your mechanics are out in the pit lane, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think they're waiting for Magnussen, and if he's already in 15th and yet to make a pit stop, then that's not good race pace for myself. I need some dynamite.
Hulkenberg, meanwhile, has just come into the pits, and Vettel is pretty much long gone. So really, the hold-up that he had with Perez a little bit earlier on didn't make that much of a difference.
No, Alonso does look quite a bit further back from Vettel. In fact, he's lost 3 seconds in total, as we have a look at Robert Quebitzer making his recovery drive on Daniel Ricciardo for 13th position. And next target is Kevin Magnussen. Here is Lewis Hamilton on Cooper Lee. Was on Cooper Lee. Oh no, he is going on Cooper Lee. I thought for a minute there he was going into the pits because he peeled to the left. But it's strange that he went for a move there, and clearly it's cost him any chance of trying to get him into turn 1. He might have to wait now till the next straight. Rounding the Curva de Sol they go. And Hamilton firmly in the slipstream. Is Cooper Lee going to defend aggressively? Not on this occasion. I think he's had his fun with Hamilton. Now he's going to let Lewis go and concentrate on his own race.
Lewis now up into P6. Will he now go after Felipe Massa? Is now Quebitzer again on a charge.
This is Kevin Magnussen on the soft tyres. So he's qualified well, but the tyres aren't particularly working well in the race. So 12th position for the recovering Quebitzer. His next targets, he's got the 2 Pedersens in front, 10th and 11th for Perez and Grosjean. Here is another recovering driver in the form of Thomas Gonzalez against FF1M rival Charles Pic.
Let's see if he can try and get by. Pic, though, not having any of it. Will Gonzalez go a little bit later on the brakes? He forces Pic to a little mistake, and Gonzalez gets up into 18th.
18th position. Next target, Kimi Raikkonen in 17th, and Raikkonen himself is in a queue behind Yusuke Yoshida and Nico Rosberg. But for how much longer? Because Raikkonen's having a look at Rosberg into 4. Not quite. And here comes Gonzalez.
Let's see then. Obviously Rosberg at the moment doing a good job keeping back Raikkonen, but I must say where we're currently at the moment is not really ideal at the moment, being down in 16th and 22nd.
Yeah, it's been a tricky start to the season for Willows, unfortunately.
Given that we came off the back of winning our first Constructors' Championship as well, so yeah, a lot of catching up to do.
So rounding the Junsao corner, and it looks as if Rosberg is going to make a move on Itsuki Yoshida for 15th position. I wonder if Courtney will be thinking about bringing in Kamui Kobayashi in the place of Yoshida.
Who knows, really? I have been hearing those rumbles for quite a while with Shake and Bake, but Rosberg going for the dive bomb, and he's through.
Up to 14th position goes Nico Rosberg. Now Itsuki Yoshida has got Kimi Raikkonen to deal with. And it looks as if it's going to be easy meat, unless the higher engine modes. That's higher engine modes on the Shake and Bake, helping him out there. And
we got a retirement.
That's Daniel Ricciardo out of the race.
Now, what's going to be the issue here then, I wonder? It looks like mechanical, and it's suspension.
Suspension problems for Daniel Ricciardo, and that's not good news for the championship leader. And at the inside...
There goes Hamilton on the inside.
On Felipe Massa, that's 5th position for Hamilton. Now here's Quebitzer versus Grosjean for 10th position.
On the inside he goes. Can he get himself into the top 10? Yes, he can.
Position gained for Quebitzer. So both Gajeiras showing some very, very good race pace, because we have got Jean-Eric Vergne only 8 seconds off of Sebastian Vettel in the lead. So the early pit stop is starting to hinder Vettel a little bit as the two Mitchells go into combat together. It's Hulkenberg challenging Lee for 7th position. Lee all over the place, but Hulkenberg showing a bit of caution so far. But the front three are definitely closing in now.
Here goes Hulkenberg now then on the inside of Cooper Lee. Can he get the move done? And yes, he can.
7th position for Hulkenberg. He started 7th actually, so he's back to where he started. Now Sergio Perez. Lee struggling a little bit now for whatever reason. He qualified well, but struggling a bit in the race.
I wonder if has he made a pit stop yet as Cooper Lee? I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
I reckon he must have done. I think if everybody's two stopping, then on lap 37 they would have made their first stops by now. So Lee could have been one of the earlier ones to have pitted.
Who knows, really? Because I find it a bit bizarre how he's dropping back all of a sudden, because usually the normal explanation would be that he's on a heavy fuel load, but if he's already pitted, then I don't know why he's dropping back. Bit bizarre.
But here's Vettel now, only 1.4 seconds ahead of Fernando Alonso now, as we are about to start lap number 40. 1.4 seconds goes up to 1.5 seconds, so Vettel's struggling in the middle sector, but his higher engine modes are doing him some good on the straight. So once Alonso catches up to him, he's going to have a bit of a job getting past Vettel.
You got to remember as well, though, that Alonso is actually on fresher tyres than Vettel, because he came into the pits, I think, around about 2 to 3 laps later than Vettel did, so that's probably why he's been able to gain, particularly in the corners, because he's got a lot more grip than what Vettel has at the moment.
And Vettel took on a very, very heavy fuel load for this middle stint as well, so I think Alonso will be the first one to pit as well. So it is actually looking good for Alonso to take back-to-back wins in Central and South America, as Lewis Hamilton comes into the pits quite early, if that's his second and final stop, from 10th position. In fact, 10th position, that's not right. That's why a brake problem.
Not ideal there for, as I've forgotten the team name.
The Exolite driver.
I think what's his name is going to kill me here.
He was a Gajera driver last season, now he's with Exolite. Actually, Hamilton has driven for loads of different teams. He drove for Shake and Bake in 2010, then Pedersen 2011, Tornado 2012, then Gajera, then FJR, then Gajera, now with Exolite, as we have a look at a GRM getting past at Sainz on Button.
And look how close the top two is now. Alonso's getting that little bit closer, because he's now under a second now behind Vettel.
Just 9/10 of a second now between the two, and Jean-Eric Vergne only 5.6 off of these two, and catching. So it could be a three-way battle for the lead in a few laps' time.
That all depends, really, if Vergne can keep this pace up, because he's still got, as you said, 5.6 seconds to still gain onto these two. But if these two can keep holding each other up, and given that we've seen that the Shake and Bake seems to be on max power down the straight compared to the Tornado, then who knows, really? He could quickly get himself into this, as Grosjean's now out of the race.
Not been a good start to the season for Grosjean. He's had a puncture in the first race, and there's yellow flags, so that must be where he's pulled off. Then he didn't have a good Mexico either, and once again suffering some gremlins in Brazil.
As now look at this, Alonso in the slipstream of Vettel, but can he get past the Shake and Bake, which, as we know, has got max power down the straight?
Yeah, so it's going to have to be a good slingshot out of the Senna S and the Curva de Sol, which Alonso has now got. Now Vettel's going to have a job keeping him back, but there's the grunt from the Megatron engine. There's doing him a lot of good, but defending it. Oh, that's Yoshida out of the race.
Oh dear, dear. Courtney Cass is not going to be happy with that one.
No, and the Gajira slowing up is not going to be happy. That was Verne slowing up a bit. He was half a second quicker than Vettel on that lap, and it's suspension again, so it's been a bumpy circuit, and it's caught out not just Ricciardo, but Yoshida as well.
Could that be an omen for Vettel? In the case of Courtney Cass, are we hoping that's not the case?
And it won't do their development any good either.
As now Alonso closer than what he has been ever to the back of Vettel, but can he get him on the straight where he's been struggling to get past him all this time?
He's firmly in the slipstream now as they cross the line to start lap 43. Here comes Alonso. Vettel moving across on him on the straight, and that has forced Alonso to back off slightly. And Verne lost a lot of time on that lap, nearly 2 seconds, so he's going to have to do all that hard work again.
Interesting tactics by Shake and Bake, wouldn't you say, Mr. Brickles?
Vettel desperate to hang on to the lead because Alonso, I'm sure, is pitting first out of these two and would have a new tyre advantage and would probably take the lead. But then Vettel would have the fresher tyres in the final stint.
And given how much power he's got compared to the Tornado down the straight, he could make him his breakfast if he gets close to him after the second round of stops.
Breakfast, lunch and tea all in one.
Indeed.
As they round the Bico de Pato curve, that translates as Duck's Beak. Now through Mergulo. One of some of my favourite corner names at Interlagos. It's probably one of my favourite circuits in F1.
My favourite corner name on this track has to be Young Cow, just because it makes you sound very smart when you don't pronounce the J.
Here comes Alonso. Is he going to outbrake Vettel? Vettel making sure that Alonso can't outbrake him into the first corner. A bit bouncy over the curbs. As they round this...
Do you think that's... Go on, continue.
Sorry, rounding the sun curve. That's all I was going to say.
Oh, I was just going to say, do you think that's probably where the suspension's probably taking most of the hammering today, considering that we've seen quite a few suspension failures?
I think Grosjean, did he have a suspension failure as well, or was that transmission?
I think it did say suspension from what I remember, so
3 out of 3 suspension failures at Interlagos so far. Could there be more to come? There's still 26 laps to go, still a long way. And meanwhile, who have we got further back? We've got Verne still, he's now 6.1 seconds behind these two, so he's closing the gap once again. Bottas has had a very good race. He went from 16th on the grid, he's now 4th. So some pace in the GRM. And Hulkenberg 5th, Perez 6th. Then we've got Massa and Quebitzer rounding out the top 8. So it seems to me that Mugen have got good grunts round Interlagos because Verne, Bottas and Quebitzer have made their way into the points.
Alonso taking a very interesting line there to try and get past Vettel, but again, he just can't seem to get him on the straight.
It's pretty much a mirror of last season when Hamilton had caught up to Vettel, but he couldn't do anything about the straight line speed of the Shake and Bake.
Seems that the Shake and Bake always seem to come up with the same sort of tactics that they had last season when it comes to the engine, and for whatever reason, their rivals just can't seem to get a grasp of it.
Yeah. Likes to play the risky card, does Courtney Cass. And again, 8 tenths Verne took out of Vettel and Alonso on that last lap. So could still be a 3-way battle for the lead, depending on how well Verne gets through any traffic. He's got no traffic, it's just himself and this pair.
And then you've got the fact that these two just keep on constantly scrapping with each other, which is just helping Verne just break into their gap pretty much a lot of the time.
Absolutely, and Alonso is due in the pits soon. He's only got 5 laps of fuel, so he's gonna... I still think he will lead after the final pit stops if he is pitting first, but I think Alonso would rather do it on track. Vettel defending once again. That's tight. That is tight. He's alongside now, but Vettel hanging on round the outside.
I thought for a minute there Fernando had scared Vettel to go wide there, because if he did that, then I would have actually praised Alonso for that.
I thought there was going to be contact between the two. He's very close to the rear tyre.
Again, Fernando can't get by. This is probably being a bit frustrating at the moment for both Fernando and Tornado at the moment.
Yes, I can already see Tobias's comments coming through on the live chat.
Yeah, we know how angry he was last season, but it seems like he must have definitely worked very closely onto this season to get himself back to the front, and it seems like me and him might have switched places a bit.
Yeah, so I suspect Tobias is definitely enjoying this though, as rounds the junction curve on the long climb.
Will Fernando get him this time by?
A little bit further back this time, but in the slipstream, it's good for the end of the straight. Here comes the slipstream. Has he got enough? Here it comes.
I
Not
doubt
quite.
it. I would expect, looking at the amount of fuel he's got left, I would expect to see Fernando pit in about 2 laps' time, I would suspect.
Around lap 49 during the pits. And there's a bit of traffic approaching that looks like Van Dorn and Da Costa, but they're not super closing up to them at this moment, so I think Alonso will make his pit stop before they reach Van Dorn.
All really depends really on how quickly they can catch up to them though. That is the thing, given how much Vettel is holding up Alonso. It might take a little bit longer than what Alonso would like to be.
As Sergio Perez comes into the pits, I saw him dropping down the order, and I wondered if he had a problem like Grosjean did, but it was just a pit stop, so Perez is the first of the 2 stoppers into the pits.
And let's see where he will emerge then on the timing tower, as Alonso is going to try again on Vettel down the pit straight.
Meanwhile, I think Sainz has just overtaken Magnussen for position, and Raikkonen may have just got past Jenson Button.
As they make their way through these corners. In fact,
that was much further back than before.
Alonso's actually pitting this lap, so a lap earlier than I thought.
And it's Verne who's actually the first of them into the pits. So Verne the first of the top 3 to blink, and Alonso is due in the pits on the following lap as Charles Pic comes into the pits, and looking for his first race finish is Pic. 6-second pit stop.
Let's see where he emerges after this pit stop. Let's see where he emerges, as there's a battle on the right hand side there as he's just coming out of the pits.
It's Quebitzer and Massa for what at the moment is 5th position, but it's not quite for position. It's not a true position just yet.
Meanwhile, Alonso coming into the pits this lap.
And I think Van Dorn was just popping into the pits as well.
The guy who, of course, replaced Fernando at my team, but in a way, Alonso's relieved not to be with my team anymore, given how much we've dropped back.
And that's both Willows into the pits, actually.
Oh, my word. Malaysia last season.
Yeah, there seems to be...
Thanks for bringing back those memories.
Seems to be whenever we commentate together, there's always a double stack, because it happened to me in Suzuka last season.
Yeah, it seems to be a curse whenever I'm in the commentary box that my drivers like to stack. Somebody's getting sacked again, I can tell you that for a fact.
And my guy was already sacked when the double stack happened in Suzuka. There's a Meister that's Verne versus Massa. And in fact, Alonso is ahead of Verne, so Verne couldn't use his fresh tyres. And Alonso's stuck behind Hulkenberg. So Vettel, if Alonso continues to get stuck behind Hulkenberg, that could save Vettel a little bit.
All really depends on what the straight line speed of the Tornado is like compared to the Mitchell, of course. Let's see. In fact, we won't see.
And Hulkenberg's actually coming into the pits.
Well, perfect timing. But at least now Fernando is free now, and he can try and get back some of the time that he lost.
So let's keep an eye on the gap at this point. Vettel 29 seconds ahead of Alonso. There is Bottas in between the two, but the Finn does have to make a pit stop. As Hulkenberg, there is confirmation in the pits, as is Massa.
Meanwhile, we're on board with Sebastian Vettel, who's coming into the pits this lap.
So he's responding as soon as Alonso got ahead of Hulkenberg. Vettel coming into the pits.
This is going to have to be a very crucial stop for the shake and bake mechanics, because of course he was battling with Alonso before this as well, and he will be hoping that Hulkenberg would have done him a favour by holding him up for a bit, but will it be enough to keep in front? Let's see. Let's see
as he pulls into his pit box, which once again don't match the car. In fact, they match the little bit in the cockpit. So interesting design there for shake and bake. 5.7 seconds is the stop. That was 0.3 quicker than Verne. I didn't catch how quick Alonso's stop was. Ran in the first. Was that Alonso? Was that Gonzalez? That was Alonso. Alonso is going to take the lead.
And I think Verne might take second, because I think that's him just behind Alonso.
It's going to be close, but Verne has just about managed it. So Vettel's gone from first to third, but he has got the freshest of the tyres. So can he do anything with it?
The race is now on between these three. This is going to get exciting.
As we have a look at Perez versus Bottas for 6th position. How on earth has Sainz got up to 5th position? That's an impressive drive, unless he's got a second pit stop to make.
Who knows? And look at all this traffic that the top three have to come up to now.
Now, who on earth have we got? That is Van Dorn? Or is it Rosberg?
I think Button is in that one as well. I think Button's in that bit of traffic they're coming up to as well. So
they're all being held up by Charles Pic.
Okay, so this might help both Verne and Vettel here, although I would say that Vettel is a lot closer to Verne than what Verne is to Alonso at the moment.
So going up the hill, we've got... Is anybody going to make a move? Vettel is close to Verne this time around. And we already know how quick the shake and bake is in a straight line. And look at that. Already alongside before they've even reached the braking zone. And that is 2nd position for Vettel.
That is just an insane amount of straight line speed that the shake and bake has at the moment. And whilst that was going on, Alonso did lap Jenson Button there. So that might be a bit crucial at the moment to get a car in between himself and Vettel at this stage.
You could get another 2 cars in between himself and Vettel with Pic and Button, or is it Magnussen? No, it is Pic and... It's a Willows that's in amongst that, but it could be a lapped Willows.
This would just sum up my luck.
As the 2 GRMs are about to go into combat, they had a bit of an incident in Melbourne. I think Bottas was spun round, and then Sainz collected him, so that was an unfortunate one. We've got Quebitzer versus one of the Mitchells. That's Quebitzer versus Hulkenberg for 8th position, as Rosberg is going to make a move on an FJR. Is that for position, or is that
not for position?
Well, either that or the lap charts have gone a bit wrong.
I don't think it's for position, because well, it says here, according to the timing screen, that Rosberg is behind Van Dorn, so we'll see about that, as meanwhile, these two are still having to negotiate the traffic at this point.
And, the Axel having to go back at Vettel. That's... Let him through, and let's see a lead battle, and that's costing Vettel dearly.
I think the timing screen is correct, because it has done it for Vettel and Verne, as you can see, and I do remember that Rosberg was down in 19th still when Vettel and Verne were still battling for position, so I think it is correct. I think because of that hold-up that we saw a little bit earlier on in the pit stop between the 2 Willowses, it has meant that one of the Willows cars has ended up a lap down to most of the field.
Yes, I just remembered the double stack now, as... There's now no traffic between Alonso and Vettel. The gap is 1.3 seconds as they cross 2nd sector. 2.5 tenths quicker in the last sector alone. So 10 laps to go. Can Vettel catch and pass Alonso?
It will be interesting to see, and we know how quick that shake and bake is in a straight line, especially when Alonso was trying to do the chase and he just couldn't seem to find a way through past Vettel before the pit stop. So I think if Vettel gets close behind Alonso, I think Vettel's going to have him personally.
It's going to be easy meat if he does catch up to him, but is the shake and bake reliable? Well, we've got 10 laps to find out.
He's getting really close through the corners here. I think he might even get him the next time we get onto the pit straight.
I'm just having a look at the lap charts. I think Sainz has made a pit stop because he's dropped way down to 11th position. So that was a very late second pit stop. In fact, he just set the fastest lap as Sainz, so that might have been unscheduled, so that's unfortunate for the GRM.
Well, we were wondering if earlier on if he still needed to make a pit stop, so it might be scheduled, it might not be, but who knows really. But surprisingly, Vettel not closer than I thought he would be on Alonso this time by.
No, but Alonso did feel the need to defend for whatever reason going into the first corner, and that's put him out a very bad line. Here comes Vettel in the slipstream, and is this going to be... How easy is this meet going to be? It's alongside going into the fourth corner, and that is... Well, that's quite simple for Vettel in the end.
Yeah, Alonso clearly making a similar error to what Verstappen did in real life, where defending to the inside where he didn't need to.
But still, a second place will be a good result for Alonso, and especially for Tornado's championship campaign. Now, what can Verne do? He's 3.2 seconds behind. That was behind Vettel when the laps started. Now, let's have a look at the lap charts, because we've got Lewis Hamilton now up in 4th position in what's been a decent drive for himself in the Exolite. Robert Quebitzer, despite having spun off very early on in the race, has made his way up to 5th position, so that's some recovery. Bottas in 6th, and then we've got Hulkenberg and Massa completing the top 8.
Yeah, I think you'd have to say the most impressive out of all of them is probably Verne, going up into 4th position from where he started.
From 12th on the grid was Verne, and yeah, both Gajerias have been very impressive, and they're not finished yet because Quebitzer is going to get Lewis Hamilton for 4th position. So both Gajerias now in the top 4.
Indeed so, and I would say that would give them the highest points out of all the teams, but then I realised that first place is worth 12 points, so it won't.
And it's not over yet for Hamilton because Bottas has just taken 5th position off of the excellent driver Hamilton, very wide at the exit, but hanging on to 6th position. But for how much longer? Because Nico Hulkenberg is on the march. Hamilton had that very early second pit stop because of a brake issue, so they would have moved his second stop ahead of schedule. So I think he's struggling on old tyres, and Massa's looking a bit feisty as well.
These two in the slipstream of each other right now. It'll be very interesting to see. Hulkenberg's going to dive to the inside. Will he get Hamilton for P6 down the inside? And unlike in 2012, he actually does that move cleanly.
A clean move for the Mitchell, looking for their first points of the season, and Massa continuing his run. He's about to move up to 7th if he gets his braking right. Hamilton not defending, and Massa outbraking Hamilton into 7th position.
That'll keep the Brazilian fans happy for sure.
Yes, so now we've got just 5 more laps to go. This is Cooper Lee now against Lewis Hamilton, so Lee looking for his first points of the season as well. Hamilton struggling badly.
Then behind that, well, you've got Perez. So at one point, with Lewis in 4th position, it looks like he's going to finish around about 10th, whereas, as mentioned a few laps ago, he was in 4th position, so it's very clear that the tyres haven't worked out. There is a yellow flag at turn 1. There's an engine that's blown up.
And it's Jenson Button in the other Exolite. He was having a difficult race anyway, and, well, now he's out of it.
And meanwhile, Cooper Lee, back to the action. Can he get by onto Hamilton? And yes, he can.
8th position for Lee. Although having started on the front row, it's been a bit of a difficult race for himself, but nevertheless he is in the points now. Hamilton has got... Who on earth did he have behind him? Perez, lurking large. Here's Sebastian Vettel, 2 laps to go, and he's pulled away from Alonso in this final stint. The gap is now 4.8 seconds, and that earlier pit stop for Verne not quite paying out in terms of the battle for the lead, but still a very good drive from 12th nonetheless.
Indeed so. both Mitchells now in the points after Lee overtook Hamilton, of course, and obviously just to confirm, speaking of Exolite, the specific problem Button had, it was an oil leak he had.
So the oil going into the engine somewhere and causing a bit of a smoky end.
As Vettel coming up to a bit of traffic, but he's got a 4.8 second lead, so unless he has an FJR moment from last season in Canada, it should be plain sailing for Vettel.
Should be, although we do know how fragile the shake and bake appears to be this season. And speaking of FJR, that is Charles Pic in front of Vettel.
As we now start the final lap of the race.
4.8 seconds was the gap, it's now 5.3, so Vettel looking very comfortable. And Verne 9 seconds off, but solidly in third. Quebitzer in fourth, Bottas fifth, and we got Hulkenberg, Massa and Lee completing the top 8.
Out of turn number 4 we go, and through turn 5, and Vettel, in fact he's actually coming up to lap 1 of the Tornadoes. That will of course be Thomas Gonzalez. What a race to forget for him, given that at one point he was in the top 3.
So it's actually Kevin Magnussen right in front of Vettel at the moment. But yeah, that's definitely a missed opportunity for Gonzalez, and especially after coming off of 2 6th places. Like I say, he hasn't set the world quite alight, but he has shown glimpses of his speed, especially qualifying third on the grid, so I'm sure Gonzalez's time would come eventually.
But meanwhile, Vettel coming around the last corner,
and this would kickstart his championship campaign after failing to finish the first 2 races, and Sebastian Vettel wins the Brazilian Grand Prix at the circuit where he won the Drivers' Championship last season. So justifying shake and bake's strong speed, and that's the first win. Alonso will come home in second ahead of Jean-Eric Verne in third, and then the top 8 as before would be Quebitzer, Bottas, Hulkenberg, Massa and Lee. Here is confirmation of the race results. Only his 13th career victory. You'd have thought Vettel would have had more.
Yeah, especially given that he's a 2-time world champion in this series, so yeah, a bit surprising that this is only his 13th career victory, but at least it's not unlucky for him.
Not unlucky at the moment. And of the lesser positions, we had Lewis Hamilton finishing 9th. Oh, look at the gap between Sainz and Perez, it was just 0.02 of a second.
There must have been side by side coming across the line there, Sainz just beating Perez in the end, of course.
Absolutely, that was the benefit of fresh tyres for Sainz after what was a late pit stop.
A double points finish for Mitchell, might I add, as well, so I think you said this is their first points of the season.
Absolutely, yes, and having both in the points is definitely a good sign for them. And you can see the list of retirements. We've got 3 suspension failures, and then it was an oil leak for Jenson Button at the end.
And a race to forget for both my drivers.
Again, the difficult start to the season continues. And it was a bit of a poor race for Kimi Raikkonen, having started 6th on the grid. Just didn't have the pace underneath him.
I would say that this is like 2013 for our guys, but I think this is a bit worse, to be honest.
In 2013, you did have some points in the... I think it was in Malaysia, you might have had a couple of points. But, yeah, definitely a difficult start to the season for yourself. Hopefully it'll get better for you.
Hopefully indeed, but as you can see, we have got a tie at the top of the championship now between Alonso and Ricciardo.
And just behind, Vettel moves up to 4th, behind the impressive Felipe Massa. And the Constructors' Championship, we have got Tornado, Andrew Racing and Meister in the top 3, all Climax powered. But it is Tornado who now leads.
Mitchell being the odd one out, of course, with Climax engines, because they're down in 10th.
Yes. And the rest of them, Shake and Bake now move up to 5th thanks to Vettel's win, although behind Gajera, who have been quietly racking up the points since Mexico, well, 1 race ago, but yeah, good haul of points for Gajera and Shake and Bake. So that was the Brazilian Grand Prix. We'll be moving over to Europe now, and a return of the San Marino Grand Prix at Mugello. I am looking forward to that one.
I am indeed, definitely, and hopefully I can do some work at that time to hopefully address the issues of my car.
Of course, there's developments in the engine coming up, so hopefully both of us can improve somewhat. So from the two of us, we shall see you for the next race.
Bye bye.